Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Today we'll be creating a summer welcome wreath using the one roll deco mesh method. You'll find the full materials list in the description of this video below. Let's dive in. I am so excited to teach you this one roll deco mesh wreath method. Let me show you some of the supplies that we'll be using today. We're going to use this 15-inch work wreath frame, a roll of 10-inch deco mesh. How cute is that pattern, friends? Our flamingo welcome sign, a little bit of greenery, a variety of wired ribbon, and then the tools you'll need, friends, will be a good pair of scissors or your rotary cutter and self-healing mat, your hot glue gun and glue sticks, some wire snips, and 2 mounting brackets. The first thing we need to do is prep our sign. And so what I'm going to do here, friends, is just cut off this rope hanger that came with it. We don't need that. And we're going to put a couple of mounting brackets onto our sign to hold our floral wire in place later once we're ready to attach it to our work wreath frame. If you're not familiar with mounting brackets, friends, these are a wreath maker's best friend, or one of them. They're just 1 inch by 1 inch square plastic brackets. And if you can see that, friends, on the sides all the way around, there are holes so that you can run your floral wire or zip ties or chenille stems through there to attach your sign or embellishment down to your wreath base. And then the back has some super sticky 3M sticky tape. And all you do, friends, is peel the backing off of your mounting square. I typically use 2 for my signs, 1 on each end. They certainly don't have to be even or square, friends. Nobody's going to see them. And then for just a little bit of extra strength and stability, I like to run a bead of glue right around the perimeter of that mounting bracket, just to give it a little bit extra strength and stability. So I'm just running a quick bead of glue all the way around each bracket here. Perfect. And now I'm going to set my sign off to the side to dry while we work on adding deco mesh into our wreath base. So again, friends, we're going to use the one roll method for our wreath base. And it's just as simple as it seems, friends. So you're also going to need your self-healing mat for measurements, or a ruler if that's what you prefer. Just a quick bit of Wreath 101, friends, if you're new to wreath making. This is called a work wreath frame. You can purchase these from basically any online wreath making outlet. You can grab them on Amazon, and they come to you just like this, friends. There's a variety of different sizes. Typically the 15-inch is the most popular, and it comes to you pre-built out with all of these wire ties. And so this is your actual wreath frame. You can see there's 2 layers. So you've got your lower and your upper. And then all of these are called ties, friends. And they're basically like a really thick, strong chenille stem or pipe cleaner that's ready for you to load your mesh in. And all I'm doing here, friends, is just poking these guys outward so they're pointing away from the center of the wreath. And then I'm going to leave the upper level alone. The one wreath method, friends, is just that. So this is a great method if you are new to wreath making and you don't have a lot of supplies on hand and you want to make a simple but beautiful wreath. The one roll method is a great method for that. And so we're going to use this entire roll of deco mesh on our wreath to create our base, but no other. And so we're going to start on the lower level, friends, and we're going to be using what's called the poof and curl method. And the first thing we have to do is add our poofs. And a poof is just a bit of the deco mesh running between one set of ties to the next to create a poof effect, and there's really no scissors involved until we finish adding our poofs in. And so what I want you to do, friends, after you've got all of your lower level of ties pointing outwards, grab your deco mesh, roll it out a little bit, and you can totally use any color, friends. This is really more of a recipe, so feel free to customize this and make it your own. And what we're going to do here is roll our deco mesh out, curl side down, and with your hands, keeping them stationary, friends, you're going to place your hands at the end of the piece of deco mesh, and then keeping your thumb stationary, just kind of scrunch and gather the deco mesh, feeding it back into your thumbs here until you've got this little bitty wad of deco mesh with approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches of a tail. And you're going to choose any set of lower level ties. At this point, our wreath doesn't have a top or bottom. And then you're going to take your pinch of deco mesh, open up that first set of ties into a wide V, and then place that deco mesh all the way down to the base. And then take your ties and give them 2 tight twists. And then just kind of make sure your ties are continuing to poke outwards. And we want each poof to be a 10-inch poof. So either measuring with your self-healing mat by just looking through, or grabbing your ruler, you're going to measure from the point of your ties where you've just added your deco mesh out 10 inches. And once you have that 10-inch mark, friends, you're going to scrunch and gather that deco mesh again, just like we did a moment ago, into your hands. That's going to give you this wad of deco mesh. And you're going to move to the very next set of ties on the lower level of your wreath base, keeping your fingers pinching that deco mesh. Open up those ties into a wide V and place that all the way down at the base of that V at the center. And again, give it 2 tight twists. And point those guys outwards. You've just created your first 10-inch poof. Let's do one more together, friends, and then we'll speed ahead. I'm going to take my ruler, or you can use your self-healing mat. I'm going to place it at the base of the most recent set of ties I've loaded here. I'm going to measure out 10 inches, and then I'm going to scrunch and gather my mesh to create my next poof. I'm going to keep a hold of that with my right hand, and then I'm going to come over to the very next set of ties, place that deco mesh all the way down at the base, give it 2 tight twists, point those stems outward again, and we've just made our second 10-inch poof. So let's speed ahead here, friends. Go ahead and add 10-inch poofs all the way around the lower level of your work wreath frame, and then I'll meet you back here once we get back to our starting point. All right, friends, we've added our 10-inch poofs all along the bottom layer of our work wreath form, and we're getting ready to make our last 10-inch poof. And so we're going to be adding this in, securing it down to where we actually started. And you're going to follow the same method, friends. Just go ahead and measure out your 10 inches, scrunch and gather that deco mesh into your fingers. And then you're going to carefully untwist those ties. As long as you don't disturb your mesh, it's not going to pop out. And then just add your last poof right on top of your first poof. And give it a couple of tight twists. Point those guys outwards. And you've just added your last lower level poof. So now we're going to follow the exact same method on the upper level, friends. However, instead of our poofs being 10 inches, they will be 8. We need to reduce the size a little bit so that the upper level doesn't overpower the lower level. But first, what we need to do is jump our mesh from the lower level to the upper level. There's no cutting involved here. You're basically just going to find the closest set of upper level ties to where we left off at. It doesn't matter if it's forward or behind. As you can see, the behind ties for me are the closest. And what we're going to do is just gather our mesh, kind of bunch it together nicely, as you can see I'm doing here. And there's no poof when we jump, friends. We're just literally pulling that mesh tautly and adding it into that set of ties. And then we're going to give it 2 tight twists. And we'll point those back inward. So if you can see here, friends, there's no poof. We just literally jumped that mesh from the lower level to the nearest set of ties on the upper level. And then we have a nice taut strip of mesh going from the lower to the upper. And now we're ready to start our poofs. And so I'm just going to measure as I did before. However, this time, as I mentioned, we'll be doing 8-inch poofs. A little bit trickier on the upper level, but definitely manageable. So I'm just scrunching and gathering my deco mesh into my hands, moving to that next set of ties, opening them up into a wide V, placing the mesh all the way down at the base of that V, and giving it 2 tight twists. Once you add that poof, then you can take that set of ties and point them outwards away from the center. And you've just created your first 8-inch poof. So go ahead and work your way around the inner upper level of your frame, adding 8-inch poofs, and I'll meet you back here when we get to the last set of ties. All right, friends, we're getting ready to add our final poof on the upper level. So just as we had done all along the way, we're going to measure out 8 inches, scrunch and gather our mesh, and then we're going to be adding this poof to where we actually had started our upper level. So again, very gently open up your ties, try not to disturb the mesh that's already in there, and then place your deco mesh right on top of that first bit of deco mesh. And again, give it 2 tight twists and point those ties a little bit outwards. Then you're going to grab a good pair of scissors, and it's time to cut off the deco mesh. Now, you want to be careful, friends, that you don't cut anything you don't intend to. And so you're going to want to leave about 1 inch or so tail of deco mesh. So just take your time and trim off your excess deco mesh. Just be mindful of where you're cutting so you don't accidentally cut one of your poofs. And that's all there is to it, friends. We've just added the first layer of deco mesh into our wreath. And now it's time to jump on to the next layer. As you can see, friends, this deco mesh is so cute with the checks. However, it's really light and airy, and we need to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. So what I want you to do is take your wreath base and set it off to the side for a short bit. And then either grab your scissors or your rotary cutter. Friends, let me just give you a quick wreath pro tip if you are new to wreath making and haven't yet utilized what's called a rotary cutter. As you can see, it basically looks like a small pizza cutter. The rotary cutter and self-healing mat is a great way for you to quickly cut your deco mesh pieces up and have a nice smooth edge. So you definitely want to add this to your wreath making toolkit, and I'll leave a link for that for you below. All right, friends, and so now we're left with this partial roll of deco mesh. And what I want you to do at this point, friends, I want you to cut the entire remainder of this roll at 8-inch pieces, okay? And so you're just gonna roll out your mesh, and then either measuring with your self-healing mat or a ruler, you're going to measure out 8 inches and then cut your pieces off. So just like that, you're going to continue to cut the entire roll until you've cut through the entire roll, with all of your pieces being 8 inches in length, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, so now you should have cut up the remainder of your roll into 8-inch pieces, and you may have a couple of extra pieces. That's okay. What I want you to do, friends, is to grab one of your pieces of deco mesh that you've cut into 8 inches and pull your work wreath frame back up. And as you can see, friends, your mesh is going to want to curl in on itself. So following that direction, you're just going to take your deco mesh and roll it up into a curl or a tube. That's probably 1.5 inches in diameter in the center, a little bit wider at the ends. There's no perfect way to make a curl. Just go ahead and roll it up onto itself. And we're going to add 1 curl to every set of ties throughout our work wreath base here on both the upper and lower level. So it doesn't matter where you start, just make sure you add 1 curl per every set of ties. And to add the curl, friends, you're just going to gently untwist your ties and then seam side down on your curl. Place that guy right in the center of the curl all the way down at the base of your V, and give it a couple of tight twists and continue to point those stems outwards. We'll do one more together and then we'll zoom through. Take your 8-inch piece of deco mesh and curl side up. Just roll that into a nice curl, 1 inch or 2 in diameter. Go to your next set of available ties, gently untwist them, and then place your curl in the center all the way down at the base, seam side down into that set of ties. Give it a couple of tight twists, point those ties outwards, and you've just added your next curl, friends. So go ahead and work your way through your wreath, adding 1 curl to every single set of ties on your wreath. If you happen to have a couple of curls left over, just go ahead and add those extras randomly throughout your wreath, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, we have fully loaded our wreath base with all of our deco mesh, and as you can see, once we added those curls into our base, it just gave it a lot more density and depth and really just gave it that beautiful full look. So now it's time to jump on to the next step. The next things we need to do here, friends, is first of all, if you didn't do so earlier, make sure that upper level sets of ties are pointing outwards away from the center of your wreath. And it's time to attach our sign. It should be good and dry now. And you can use chenille stems or pipe cleaners, zip ties. I'm actually going to use some floral wire stems. If you've not seen these before, friends, these are just heavy gauge, heavy duty floral wire stems that you can buy in bulk, and I find them great for adding in signs or heavier embellishments into my wreaths. They're very sturdy and they poke through the mesh far more easier than pipe cleaners. So what I'm going to do, friends, I'm going to add 1 floral wire stem to each bracket here. These guys are 18 inches in length, and so I just fold them in half simply into a loose V so that I can identify that center point. You just run that right through your bracket there, and then I just give it a loose twist or two just to keep it from sliding off or getting squirrely. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the other bracket. I've folded my floral wire stem in half to identify that center point. I'm going to run that right through my bracket and then give it a couple of loose twists just so it doesn't slide off. And you can place your sign at the bottom part of your wreath, off to the side, in the center, wherever you'd like. I'm actually going to add it right to the center. And so I'm going to poke my floral wire right through there, and I'm going to scooch my curls over, friends. I don't want my wire to go through my curls. Give yourself a little bit of grace while you do this. And you just want to do one side at a time. So I've poked it through, I'm hanging onto my sign so it doesn't go anywhere, and I'm flipping this guy over. And you want your wires, your floral wires or whatever you're using, to wrap around the innermost ring and the middle ring so that it's anchoring down. And I'm just going to give it a couple of loose twists, just enough to hold it into place. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same thing to the other side. You want to pay attention with this second side, friends, to make sure that your sign is going to be centered once you add this guy in. Just going to give it a couple of loose twists to make sure it's where I want it to be. I'm going to flip it over one last time and make sure that my sign is centered and that nothing is trapped down in there before I tighten it up, and everything looks great. I'm going to flip it over one last time and grab my needle nose pliers, and I'm just going to tighten these guys up a little bit more. And basically what you want to do, friends, is make sure that you're twisting your wires or whatever you're using at basically 80% tension. You want it tight enough that it's nice and secure, but you don't want it so tight that your sign recedes into your wreath, or that the tension is so strong it pops off your mounting brackets. And then I just trim off my excess bits of floral wire. And then I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, pinch those ends together, just kind of curl them back into the wreath. That way, if somebody grabs a hold of this, they don't get poked, nor does you or your customer's door. And last but not least, I just grab my glue gun and run a little bead, maybe the size of 2 peas, right over where that floral wire meets the wire frame of our wreath. And I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes to dry. And you can tell your glue is dry, friends, when you first attach it or add your glue drops. You can see that it's clear. Once glue dries, it's got a milky opaque look, basically nearly the same color as your glue stick, and that'll let you know that it's dry. So we'll give this a couple of minutes to dry, and then we'll flip it over and move on to the next step. Our glue is nice and dry on our sign, friends, so I'm going to flip that guy over and you can see what it's looking like. Super cute. So let me tell you the vision for this wreath that I have at this point, friends. I intend to add a cute bow to the upper left-hand corner and the bottom right-hand corner. We'll then add a few ribbon tails into the remaining ties, and we'll top it off with a little bit of greenery. So we need to make our 2 bows for the upper left and the bottom right. So I'm going to sit my wreath off to the side. So the ribbon choices I've got here, friends, I've got 2 2.5-inch ribbons and 2 1.5-inch ribbon. Of course, they're all wired. I've got a black and cream striped, a cute flamingo, a black and white polka dot, and a flamingo and palm. I'll be securing my bows down with some 6-inch milky clear zip ties. So I'm just going to grab my good pair of scissors here and we'll get started on our bows. Friends, I'm going to move fairly quickly through this bow making process just to save some time on our video. However, if you are like me and struggling with bow making as I did when I first started wreath making, I do have a couple of step-by-step slow moving bow making tutorials. I'll leave both of those video links for you below in the description of this video so you can get some extra bow making support if you'd like. All right, friends, we've got both of our bow stacks made, and all I'm going to do at this point, friends, I'm not going to fluff my bows out until I actually get them into the wreath. So all I'm going to do at this point is just pull my tails down so that they're pointing in the right direction. I'll leave my loops alone, so they'll just be pointing awkwardly from side to side. we'll get these guys added into our wreath, and then we'll do that initial rough fluff. So if you're new to my channel, friends, when I add my bows in, I always add them in and give them what I call a rough fluff. But I don't actually trim and do that final fluff until my wreath is finished. It's just a personal preference. You can sure do it how you wish. These are basically the same exact bow type, friends. So I'm just going to come to this upper left set of ties, and I'm going to kind of part my tails. I want to make sure that I've got one tail on either side of that tie. And then I'm just going to give it a couple of tight twists to hold that guy down. And then I'll just use my snips to trim off the excess bit of ties, because we don't need those, and throw them away. Then I'm just going to take that and kind of poke it down and out of the way. And we'll do this rough fluff. And all I do to fluff my bows when I've just got the two loops, friends, I'm basically pulling them into an X, and I start at the lowest level. So I'll have my black and white stripe going one way, my flamingo going the next, and so on. Just making a loose X. And again, this is what I call the rough fluff. We'll do this again with more accuracy once we're done with the other parts of our wreath. I just like to do this initially because it tells me where everything is going to lay. So it's just more so I can understand spacing. And then we'll make it cute and pretty here in just a short bit. There we go. Now this is wired ribbon, friends, so it'll take the shape we want it to. Just wanted to see where everything is laying, and that's going to be really, really cute. And now I'm going to do the same thing in the bottom right quadrant here. I'm going to add my next bow, so I'm just making sure that my tails and loops are all going the way they're supposed to be going. Adding that tightly into that set of ties. Giving it 3 or 4 tight twists. And then just trimming off the excess bit of our ties. I'm going to curl those guys under with my fingers here, and then I'm going to do my rough fluff, just like we did a moment ago. And again, we'll come through and do that final fluff once we're finished. And we'll trim those tails and work with that here in a short bit. Actually, friends, because I got a little bit sassy with some of these tails, I will go ahead and do an initial trim. So when I trim my tails, my thought process is I always leave them a little bit longer as opposed to shorter, because again, like you've heard me say a million times, you can take more off, but you can't put it back on. I am cutting a good bit over here because I just really made my tails crazy long when I was making my bows for some reason. Got a little too excited about our flamingos. And you can either dovetail or angle cut. As you can see, I give them each a little bit different length just because I like that texture, but you can sure do it how you want. And we'll come back in and finish fluffing that out and really ensuring our tails are the right length once we're finished here. Now your tail's a little bit longer on your lower level because you don't have to worry about it hiding your sign or getting in the way of your sign. There we go. All right, friends, so we're going to add some tails behind our bows as well, just to really help them be more fluid and a little bit more bougie. And for those tails, friends, I'm going to use one piece of each ribbon type. And I don't really like my tails on the upper level to come out much farther past my deco mesh. So I'm going to probably make 8-inch tails or so. And I'm going to add 2 sets to this upper level because I happen to have 2 sets of ties equally centered. So everything that I cut here, I'm going to cut doubly since we're going to have 2 sets of ties. And I'm just laying one on top of the other, and we're not looking for perfection, friends. Nobody's going to measure this. And each ribbon piece is going to be a few inches shorter than the previous piece. And I'm going to lay them in the middle of one another as I go. Again, not looking for perfection. Nobody's going to be measuring. So I'm curious, friends, where is everybody watching from? If you're new to my channel, I'm actually in a teeny tiny town in northern Indiana. But I always love to hear where all my fellow wreathy friends are from. Where are you guys at? Drop me a comment and let me know. Just eyeballing here, friends. They won't be exactly the same, and nobody is going to know. So as you can see, one's laying on top of the other, and I'm going to find the center. You can either eyeball it or just fold that stack in half. And then where your fingers meet here at that crease, that's your center. Just going to kind of pinch and gather, form that into a loose V right over my thumb. And then I'm going to come to this set of ties here that's behind our bow, press that ribbon tail stack all the way to the center of that set of ties, give it 2 or 3 tight twists. And I'm going to take my snips and trim off the remaining bit of that tie because we won't need that any further. And then I'll just pinch them together with my fingers, kind of curl them down and out of the way. There we go. We'll do the same thing with our second ribbon tail stack. And I'm just forming both of these sets of tails into a loose V. And now I'm going to angle cut, just like I did with our ribbon tails, each one being a little bit longer than the previous. Boy, I got really carried away with these tails again. I must be feeling a little ribbon happy today, guys. Not usually quite so wasteful. So I'm going to do this to all of my tails here. So stinking cute. Although I'm biased, I really love flamingos. All of my flowers outside this year are hot pink. I've got lots of silly flamingos adorning my yard. All kinds of fun stuff. Now we're going to flip it over. How cute is that? We're going to flip it over, friends, and do that one more time underneath our lower bow. And this time we're just going to make one set of tails. I'll try to be more mindful. Not quite so wasteful this time. My goodness. So stinking cute and summery. Just really gives it great depth and dimension. All right, friends, keep your snips out, and I want you to work through your wreath base and basically cut off these bits of ties. We're not going to add any more ribbon tails in since we've got so much bouginess already. So we need to get these guys out of the way so that we can add our floral bits in. So work your way through your wreath, trim off those excess bit of ties, and then I'll meet you back here for the next step. All right, friends, we've trimmed out all of the remaining bits of our ties on our wreath frame. And so now it's time to prepare our greenery. I'm just going to use this viney, pretty heavy duty and resilient greenery from Hobby Lobby, friends. Just a quick pro tip for you. Greenery and florals will always, always be the most expensive part of any wreath that you ever create. And Hobby Lobby actually has their entire greenery and floral section on sale for 40% off every other week without fail. So when it's time for you to buy your supplies or stock up, make sure you're paying attention to that sale. And I'm basically going to add one bit of greenery. And so by bit, we're going to go through here and snip off these pieces so that they look like this. And I'm going to add one single bit of greenery at every single place where there was a tie on a wreath base. And there are 18 sets of ties on our wreath base. We've already used 5 for our bows and our ribbon tail, so that leaves us 13. So we need 13 greenery bits. So just use any greenery floral that you prefer and cut off 13 pieces, friends, and then we'll get those glued down in. Hopefully your glue gun is still plugged in, heated, and ready to go. And to add our greenery bits in, friend, all we're going to do is run a 1/2 inch bead of glue right here at the base of our little stem, and then we're just going to place it right down where our ties were. That's a good place to add greenery, friends, because it gives lots of little feelers for that glue to anchor down. And so I'm just running a bead of glue. Probably not the best idea to do it right over your wreath in case you spill. And then securing that guy right down in where that tie once was. So go ahead and add one greenery piece to every set of ties, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now that we have our little bits of greenery added all through our wreath, let's go ahead and finish trimming up these tails, friends, specifically this side over here. Kind of my rule of thumb for tails is we don't want our sign to be blocked. So I'm just going to trim these guys up a little bit, and then we'll give those tails some curve with our fingers and see how they are looking. Just going to open up those loops a little bit more. So cute. Anytime I do anything with lots of pink and black and flamingos, I'm always tempted to keep it for myself, friends. So you can see, friends, I'm just putting the ribbon between my fingers, pulling it straight up and then off to the side a little bit, and that gives it that nice curvy bump. Very cute. And then I'll come down and do the same thing below. We don't have to be so particular about the length of our tails down here because there's no sign for it to block. And I'm doing the same thing with that set of tails we added underneath, just to really give it lots and lots of life here. So stinking adorable. Last but not least, friends, I'm going to add just a couple of these super cute, what are these even called? Hibiscus, yes. Florals. These are also from Hobby Lobby. Honestly, I would say 80%, if not better, of my florals do in fact come from Hobby Lobby. I just really like their quality, and I feel like florals are one thing you don't want to ever compromise quality on. And so this is actually called a bush. Each individual piece is then called a stem, and they're on a wire spine, friends, so they'll really bend and twist the way you want them to, and the leaves and florals along the way will slide up and down. They're called sliders. And so I've shoved those greenery bits up. I'm going to leave about a 2-inch tail to see if that's where we like it. I'm going to go ahead and leave those greenery bits in and turn that flower a little bit. And I'd like to add a couple of these on either side of our bow. So I'm going to actually stick that where I want it. I'm going to pull my bow off to the side. Probably shouldn't have fluffed it yet, but that's okay. I'm going to run a good inch bead of glue on that stem and shove that right back down into our deco mesh base here. And we'll give that some time to dry. Trim off this other hibiscus. I've just pushed those greenery bits up, leaving a couple inches of tail. Bend that a little bit so that floral head is visible. I'm going to put some glue right down that stem. Ooh, I just missed my wreath, guys. I need to follow my own advice and not do that. Right over my wreath. So we're going to let that dry for just a jiffy. We'll spin this around and add a couple at the upper level, and then we'll be finished once we fix our bows. So again, I'm just pushing the greenery bits up, leaving a couple of inches of stem. We'll add them right here. Just going to run a bead of glue again down the spine here. And there we have it, friends. I just need to come back down here to this lower level and fix my loop since I manhandled it quite a bit. How stinking cute is this beauty? Just fluffing out my loops in my tail since I moved them earlier when I was adding flowers. And there it is, friends. How stunning did that turn out? I sure hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps my little channel to grow. I will actually have this specific wreath listed in my Etsy shop. I'll list that link for you below if you'd like to snag this beauty. And of course, I'll have a materials and tools list for you below if you'd like to recreate it for yourself. Thanks so much for spending time with me this afternoon, friends. I hope you enjoyed. Happy crafting.